Good evening and welcome. Tonight, let us slow everything down and step quietly into another time. Imagine a world that moves at a gentler pace on the surface, yet demands constant effort beneath it. A world without glowing screens, instant answers, or the hum of machines doing the work for you. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a small suburban house in the early 1950s, just as the first pale light of morning begins to touch its windows. This is where our story begins today, not with dramatic events or famous names, but with an ordinary woman and the ordinary day that defines her life. It is 1953, and the alarm clock rings long before the sun has fully risen. The sound is sharp and insistent, cutting through the quiet of the house. The woman who reaches out to silence it does so out of habit, her movements practiced from years of repetition. She rises not because she wants to, but because the day demands it. In this era, the rhythm of life is not flexible. Time belongs to responsibility, and responsibility begins early. She slips out of bed carefully so as not to wake her husband, who will soon leave for work but still has a few precious minutes of sleep. The floor is cold beneath her feet. There is no central heating humming softly in the background, no automated system adjusting the temperature. The house is quiet, but it is a fragile quiet, one that will soon give way to noise, movement, and expectation. In the kitchen, the day truly begins. She turns on the stove, waiting for it to heat, the faint smell of gas mixing with the lingering scent of last night's dinner. Coffee must be brewed the slow way, water heated, grounds measured by eye rather than machine. Breakfast does not come from a box or a freezer. It is assembled by hand, with attention and care, because feeding the family is not just a task, but a measure of her worth. This is the life of a suburban housewife in 1953, a role so common that it is often treated as invisible. From the outside, it may appear simple. She does not go to an office, she does not earn a paycheck, she does not wear a uniform. Yet her labor fills every hour of the day, and there is no clear beginning or end. There are no weekends, no sick days, no moments when the work truly stops. As the household slowly wakes, her responsibilities multiply. Children appear in the kitchen, still half asleep, their energy unpredictable. One complains about breakfast, another can't find their shoes. She listens, responds, reassures, corrects, all while continuing to cook. She is not only a provider of food, but a manager of moods, a keeper of order, a quiet anchor holding the family together as the day takes shape. What makes this life particularly demanding is not just the amount of work, but the lack of tools to ease it. In 1953, many modern conveniences are still luxuries or simply do not exist. Dishwashers are rare, washing machines are heavy and temperamental, and many tasks are still done entirely by hand. Every action requires physical effort, from scrubbing pots to carrying laundry, from sweeping floors to standing for hours at the ironing board. Yet beyond the physical labor lies something more subtle and just as heavy: expectation. Society tells her that this role is her fulfillment, that she should take pride in a spotless home and a well-fed family. Advertisements, magazines, and neighbors all reinforce the same message. A good housewife is cheerful, efficient, and tireless. She does not complain. She does not ask for recognition. Her success is measured by how smoothly everything runs, and if something goes wrong, the blame often falls quietly on her shoulders. As the morning progresses, there is little time for reflection. Once the children are off to school and the husband has left for work, the house may seem empty, but her day is far from over. In fact, this is when the real work begins. Cleaning is not a quick reset, but a prolonged campaign. Every surface must be wiped, every room restored to order, because the house is a public statement as much as a private space. In this world, the home is seen as an extension of the woman herself. A messy kitchen or dusty shelf is not just clutter. It is a perceived failure. Neighbors may stop by unannounced, and their glances, however polite, carries silent judgment. She cleans not only for comfort or hygiene, but for dignity and acceptance. What is striking, when looking back from the present, is how little of this effort is recorded or remembered. History often focuses on big events and public achievements, while days like this repeat endlessly without documentation. Yet these ordinary days shape families, communities, and generations. They are the quiet foundation upon which larger stories are built. As the hours pass, the work continues in cycles. What is cleaned in the morning begins to show signs of use by afternoon. Meals create dishes, dishes create mess, and mess creates more work. There is a sense of motion without progress, of effort that maintains rather than advances. And still, she moves forward, because there is no alternative presented to her. This is not a story of tragedy, but it is also not a story of ease. It is a portrait of endurance. The 1953 housewife lives in a world that praises her role while underestimating its cost. Her strength is assumed rather than acknowledged. Her fatigue is private. Her contributions are essential, yet rarely named. By stepping into this single morning, into this single life, we begin to understand the broader reality of an entire generation of women. Their days were built from small, repetitive actions, performed with consistency and care. They shaped homes, raised children, and maintained the rhythms of daily life, often without pause and without applause. Tonight's story invites you not to judge the past by modern standards, but to observe it closely, to notice the details that are easy to overlook. In doing so, we honor the quiet resilience of those who live these days, not as history, but as life itself. And as the sun rises fully over that modest suburban house in 1953, the day is only just beginning. Morning in a 1950s household does not ease itself into being. It arrives fully formed, demanding attention the moment consciousness returns. The kitchen becomes the first battlefield of the day, a space where warmth must be created manually and order must be imposed before the rest of the house stirs completely. There is no automatic timer bringing coffee to life, no gentle hum of modern appliances waiting patiently. Everything begins with ignition, with preparation, with intention. The stove is the heart of this ritual. It must be lit, monitored, respected. The sound of gas releasing is followed by a quick spark, a practiced motion learned through repetition rather than instruction. Too slow, and the room fills with an unpleasant smell. Too careless, and there is risk. This is not a background task. It requires presence. Heat builds gradually, and with it, the kitchen awakens, shifting from cold stillness to functional warmth. Coffee comes next, not as a convenience, but as a process. Water is poured into a kettle and placed carefully on the stove. Grounds are measured by instinct, not precision tools, scooped into a percolator that has seen years of use. There is a familiarity to this object, its metal surface dulled from countless mornings just like this one. As the water heats, the smell begins to rise slowly, filling the kitchen with a promise of alertness and comfort. This coffee is not rushed. It cannot be. It brews at its own pace, demanding patience from someone who has little to spare. While the coffee works, breakfast begins. Bread is taken from its place, butter softened just enough to spread. Eggs are cracked, shells discarded, the sound sharp in the quiet house. Every movement is economical. There is no wasted energy, no unnecessary gesture. This efficiency is not taught formally. It is developed over years of managing time that never feels sufficient. Breakfast must be ready before the family fully wakes, because once they do, the kitchen becomes crowded, noisy, unpredictable. As food cooks, attention is divided. One ear listens for footsteps in the hallway, another for the change in sound from the stove that signals a pan is too hot or a pot is boiling too fast. This kind of multitasking is not praised or documented, yet it defines the rhythm of the morning. The kitchen is not just a place of cooking, but of anticipation. Each task is performed with the knowledge that interruption is inevitable. When the children arrive, the pace shifts instantly. Chairs scrape against the floor, voices overlap. Small conflicts emerge over seating or portions. The breakfast table becomes a place of negotiation. She serves food while answering questions, resolving disputes, and reminding everyone of the time. There is no pause between roles. Cook, mediator, scheduler, caregiver all exist simultaneously, without clear boundaries. What makes these moments particularly demanding is the expectation that they unfold smoothly. A calm breakfast is seen as a reflection of good household management. If something burns, if a child complains too loudly, if time runs short, the failure feels personal. The pressure is subtle but constant, reinforced by cultural narratives that present the morning routine as effortless when done correctly. The coffee is poured, cups placed carefully within reach. It is often consumed standing, between tasks, rather than enjoyed in stillness. Sitting feels like a luxury reserved for later, though later rarely comes. Even this brief moment of warmth and bitterness is shared, diluted by responsibility. The mug is set down unfinished more often than not. As breakfast ends, dishes accumulate quickly. Plates, cups, utensils form a small mountain at the sink, signaling the next phase of work. There is no dishwasher waiting to swallow them quietly. They will be washed by hand, scrubbed clean before the residue has a chance to harden. But for now, they wait because the morning does not slow down simply because one task is complete. The children must be shepherded toward readiness. Shoes located, hair brushed, bags checked. Each item has its place, and when it is not where it should be, time is lost. Time is the one resource that never feels abundant. Every delay ripples outward, threatening the fragile schedule that keeps the household functioning. Throughout this process, there is little silence. Even in moments without conversation, the kitchen speaks through sound. The clink of dishes, the hiss of the stove, the ticking of the clock on the wall all mark the passing of minutes. That clock is both guide and judge, its steady rhythm a reminder that the morning cannot be repeated or paused. Once the family leaves the house, there is a brief, almost startling quiet. The kitchen stands as evidence of what has just passed. Crumbs on the table, a cooling stove, the lingering scent of coffee in the air. This moment could be mistaken for rest, but it is not. It is simply a transition, a breath taken before the next set of responsibilities begins. The significance of these morning rituals lies not in their novelty, but in their repetition. They happen every day, largely unchanged, forming the backbone of domestic life. They require skill, attention, and endurance, yet they leave no tangible product beyond nourishment and order. When done well, they disappear into normalcy. When done poorly, they stand out immediately. In a broader sense, the kitchen becomes a symbol of the housewife's world. It is a place of creation and control, but also of confinement. Within its walls, she demonstrates competence and care, yet her efforts rarely extend beyond them in visible ways. The satisfaction of a successful morning is quiet and internal, unshared and often unnoticed. Looking back, it is easy to underestimate the weight of these routines. They lack drama, they leave no record, and they repeat endlessly. But within them lies a form of resilience that deserves attention. To wake each morning and begin again, to manage time, resources, and people without complaint or recognition requires strength of a particular kind. The 1950s kitchen, then, is not merely a nostalgic image of pastel colors and simple meals. It is a working environment demanding and unforgiving in its own way. It shapes the day from its very first moments, setting the tone for everything that follows. And as the sun climbs higher and the house grows quieter once more, the morning rituals fade into memory, replaced by the next cycle of work that awaits, just as steady and just as unseen. The calm suggested by the early morning hours rarely survives the moment the household fully wakes. What begins as quiet preparation quickly transforms into controlled disorder, a narrow window of time where multiple needs collide at once. Breakfast is not simply a meal. It is a test of coordination, patience, and emotional balance, played out daily in the confined space of the kitchen and dining area. As chairs are pulled out and bodies settle around the table, the atmosphere shifts. Hunger sharpens tempers. Sleepiness dulls cooperation. Children argue over seating, portions, or trivial slights that feel enormous in the moment. Each complaint arrives urgently, demanding attention now, not later. There is no orderly line for concerns. They overlap, interrupt, and compete, creating a steady stream of small crises that must be resolved quickly. In the midst of this, food continues to be served. Plates are filled, glasses topped off, napkins redistributed. The physical act of feeding the family is inseparable from managing its emotions. A spilled drink is not just a mess. It is a potential meltdown. A forgotten preference can spark resentment. Anticipation becomes a survival skill. She learns to predict reactions before they surface, adjusting portions or words to prevent escalation. This labor is invisible because it leaves no physical trace once the moment passes. When breakfast ends smoothly, it appears effortless, as though harmony occurred naturally. When it does not, responsibility is assigned immediately. The success of the morning is measured less by what was eaten and more by how little conflict remains unresolved. Conversation during breakfast serves multiple purposes. It delivers instructions, reinforces schedules, and gently reminds everyone of expectations for the day. Homework is mentioned, lunches are checked, appointments confirmed. These details must be communicated clearly, yet calmly, because urgency tends to amplify tension. The tone of voice becomes a tool, carefully adjusted to keep the room from tipping into chaos. Time presses constantly. The clock is always present, even when no one looks at it directly. Each minute spent arguing is a minute lost, and lost minutes must be recovered somehow. That recovery usually comes at her expense, absorbed later through rushed cleaning or skipped rest. The pressure to keep things moving forward is relentless, and it allows little room for hesitation. Children sense this urgency instinctively. They push boundaries where they can, negotiating for extra bites, more time, or small concessions. These negotiations are rarely about the request itself. They are tests of attention and reassurance, small bids for acknowledgement before being sent out into the wider world. Responding to them requires emotional presence, even when physical fatigue is already setting in. Meanwhile, the household hierarchy asserts itself quietly. The husband prepares to leave for work, often focused on his own schedule and responsibilities outside the home. His departure time anchors the entire morning. Everything else must align around it. The children's routines follow, layered beneath his. Her own needs come last, if they are addressed at all. In these moments, she becomes the stabilizing force, absorbing stress from every direction. When a child feels anxious about school, she reassures them. When another feels ignored, she compensates with attention. When irritation surfaces, she smooths it over, redirecting energy toward resolution. This emotional regulation happens continuously, often without conscious thought, refined through repetition rather than reflection. Once the final bites are taken and chairs pushed back, the breakfast chaos dissolves almost instantly. Coats are grabbed, bags slung over shoulders, last-minute reminders exchanged. The house empties in stages, each departure leaving behind a brief echo of noise before silence returns. What remains is evidence, crumbs on the table, dishes stacked at the sink, a sense of lingering tension that fades only after the door closes. The sudden quiet can feel jarring. Moments ago, the space was crowded and demanding. Now it is empty, yet far from restful. The work simply changes form. There is no pause to process what just happened, no acknowledgement of the emotional energy spent maintaining balance. The transition is immediate and expected. What makes this daily ritual significant is its cumulative effect. One chaotic breakfast is manageable. Hundreds, repeated over years, shape habits, posture, even personality. The constant requirement to stay composed, to prioritize others' needs, and to prevent conflict leaves little room for self-expression. Over time, this becomes normalized, internalized as simply how things are done. From the outside, these mornings rarely register as remarkable. They are not documented, photographed, or discussed in detail. Yet they are foundational. They set the emotional tone for the day, influencing how each family member steps into the world beyond the front door. A calm morning can steady nerves. A tense one can linger long after. In the context of the 1950s, this responsibility carries added weight. Cultural expectations frame domestic harmony as a reflection of moral character. A well-managed household is seen as evidence of virtue and competence. Failures are interpreted personally rather than situationally. There is little acknowledgement of structural limitations or fatigue. Despite this, the routine persists, sustained by necessity rather than choice. Each morning begins with the assumption that she will manage, that she will adapt, that she will hold everything together long enough for the day to begin. And she does, not through grand gestures, but through countless small adjustments made in real time. When the last door closes and the house finally rests in silence, the breakfast chaos becomes just another completed task, folded into memory and replaced by the next obligation. There is no ceremony marking its end, no reward for success, only the quiet understanding that tomorrow morning it will happen all over again, demanding the same patience, the same awareness, and the same unseen strength. Once the front door closes and the last footsteps fade down the street, the house enters a different phase of the day. It appears still, almost peaceful, but this calm is deceptive. The silence does not signal rest. It signals responsibility. With the family gone, attention shifts fully to the condition of the home itself, a space that must be restored, maintained, and constantly corrected. The kitchen is always the first to demand attention. Breakfast leaves behind a clear trail of evidence, crumbs scattered across the table, rings at the bottom of cups, grease cooling on pans. Nothing can be left to wait. Dishes washed later become harder to clean, stains more stubborn, smells more noticeable. Delay is treated as negligence, not strategy. So the work begins immediately, sleeves rolled up, water heated, soap applied generously. Washing dishes by hand is a task that repeats endlessly throughout the day. Plates are scrubbed front and back, utensils rinsed carefully, glasses inspected for lingering marks. The work requires standing, bending, lifting, all done without the relief of automation. Hot water reddens the skin, and steam fills the small space around the sink. There is no rhythm of rest here, only the steady pace of completion. Once the kitchen is returned to order, attention spreads outward. Floors are swept, chairs pushed back into alignment, surfaces wiped clean. Dust does not wait politely in corners. It settles everywhere, visible on dark furniture and glossy finishes. Each speck feels accusatory, a sign that something has been overlooked. Cleaning becomes an act of vigilance, not reaction. The living room follows, then the hallway, then the bathroom. Each room carries its own standards, its own set of expectations. The bathroom, in particular, demands precision. Fixtures must shine, towels folded just so, mirrors free of streaks. This space, more than any other, is seen as a reflection of discipline and control. Its condition speaks loudly, even when no one is present to hear it. What makes this cycle particularly exhausting is its impermanence. Cleanliness is fragile. A freshly swept floor shows footprints within minutes. A polished surface dulls quickly. The effort invested does not accumulate. It resets. The house is never finished, only temporarily acceptable. This creates a sense of motion without progress, of labor that exists solely to preserve appearances. Beyond hygiene, cleanliness carries social meaning. In the 1950s, the home is a public-facing extension of the woman who manages it. Neighbors may stop by without notice. Friends of children might wander in after school. Each visit carries the possibility of judgment, however subtle. A dusty shelf or cluttered table is interpreted not as a momentary lapse, but as a personal failing. This pressure encourages a state of constant readiness. Even when alone, she cleans as though someone might arrive at any moment. The house is maintained not just for those who live in it, but for an imagined audience. The standard is not comfort, but presentation. It is not enough that the space functions. It must also impress. The physical toll of this routine is cumulative. Bending to scrub floors, reaching to clean windows, lifting furniture to vacuum beneath it all place strain on the body. These movements are repeated daily, without variation or relief. Fatigue builds quietly, often ignored until it becomes unavoidable. Pain is treated as an inconvenience, not a signal to stop. Despite this, there is a strange satisfaction in order. A clean room offers a brief sense of control, a visible result of effort. For a moment, the chaos feels contained. This satisfaction is real, but fleeting. It lasts only until the next task interrupts or the next mess appears. Then the cycle resumes. What is rarely acknowledged is the mental load that accompanies this work. Cleaning requires planning, prioritization, and constant assessment. Which room matters most today? What can be postponed without consequence? These decisions are made continuously, often unconsciously, shaping the flow of the day. The mind never fully rests, even when the hands pause. This work is solitary. There is no shared responsibility during these hours. No one observes the transformation from disorder to order. When the family returns later, they experience only the result, not the process. The clean house feels natural, expected. Its maintenance goes unnoticed precisely because it is successful. Over time, this invisibility reshapes identity. When labor is unseen, its value becomes internalized rather than affirmed. Pride must be self-generated because external recognition is rare. The work matters deeply, yet it exists on the margins of acknowledgement. In this environment, perfection becomes both goal and trap. The closer the house comes to ideal, the more noticeable any flaw becomes. Standards rise quietly, fueled by magazines, advertisements, and comparisons with others. The idea of good enough fades, replaced by an ever-moving target of excellence. The endless cleaning cycle is not about obsession. It is about expectation. It is about maintaining a role defined by others, upheld through routine rather than choice. The spotless home becomes proof of competence, dedication, and moral standing, even when achieving it requires personal sacrifice. As the day progresses and the house settles into its temporary state of order, there is no ceremony marking the completion of this phase. The work simply blends into what comes next. Cleaning gives way to preparation, to planning, to the next set of tasks waiting quietly on the horizon. And so the cycle continues, not because it is fulfilling, but because it is necessary. The house stands clean and ready, holding the shape of effort that will soon be undone. In its stillness lies a record of invisible work, already fading, already preparing to be done again. The sink becomes a central point of gravity in the house, drawing attention again and again no matter how many times it has already been cleared. Dishes do not arrive all at once. They appear in waves, each one tied to a meal, a snack, a cup of coffee taken in haste. The work is never contained to a single moment. It stretches across the entire day, threading itself between every other responsibility. Water must be heated each time. There is no steady supply of instant warmth. The faucet runs until the temperature reaches a tolerable balance between effectiveness and endurance. Too cool, and grease clings stubbornly. Too hot, and the skin protests. Soap is added generously, its scent sharp and familiar, a marker of work about to begin. Hands submerge, and the routine resumes. Each item requires individual attention. Plates are scraped, cups inspected, utensils separated. There is an order to it, learned through trial and repetition. Glasses first, then cutlery, then plates, then pots and pans. This sequence is not arbitrary. It minimizes waste, conserves water, and preserves a sense of control. Deviating from it invites inefficiency, something the day cannot afford. The physical posture of dishwashing is deceptively demanding. Standing still for long periods strains the lower back. Wrists twist and flex repeatedly. Fingers grip slick surfaces, adjusting constantly to prevent slips. Over time, these movements accumulate, leaving behind soreness that lingers even after the sink is empty. There is no acknowledgement of this strain, no suggestion that it matters. Interruptions are frequent. The process rarely reaches completion without pause. A ringing phone, a knock at the door, a task calling from another room. Each interruption breaks concentration, but the dishes wait patiently, unchanged. When she returns, the water has cooled, the soap thinned. The work must begin again, as though it had never started. What makes this labor particularly taxing is its lack of finality. A cleared sink offers only temporary relief. Within hours, sometimes minutes, it fills again. A single meal can undo an hour of effort. The rhythm is relentless, and its predictability offers no comfort. Knowing what comes next does not make it easier. The sensory experience is constant. The smell of food residue, the slick feel of grease, the sound of water hitting porcelain. These sensations repeat until they blur together, becoming part of the background of the day. They are rarely noticed consciously, yet they shape the atmosphere of the home. The sink is both functional space and reminder, always present, always waiting. In households without dishwashers, this task often falls exclusively to the woman. It is assumed rather than assigned. The absence of assistance is not framed as unfairness, but as normal order. When others help, it is seen as generosity rather than shared responsibility. The baseline expectation remains unchanged. Clean dishes represent readiness. They signal that the household is prepared for whatever comes next. Dirty dishes, by contrast, suggest neglect, disorder, or lack of discipline. This symbolism magnifies the importance of the task. Washing dishes becomes not just maintenance, but moral upkeep. The hands bear visible evidence of this routine. Skin dries and cracks, nails weaken, small cuts sting when exposed to soap and water. These signs are practical consequences, not complaints. They are addressed quietly, with lotion applied quickly before moving on. There is no time for recovery. The next task is already waiting. Despite its demands, dishwashing is often treated as a background activity, something done while thinking about other things. Plans are made at the sink. Schedules are reviewed mentally. Problems are considered and set aside. The repetitive nature of the task allows the mind to wander, even as the body remains engaged. In this way, the sink becomes a place of quiet reflection, though never rest. Yet even this mental space is limited. The need to remain efficient keeps thoughts from drifting too far. A dropped glass, a missed spot, a lingering stain all demand immediate correction. Attention must return again and again to the present moment, reinforcing a cycle of focus and interruption. When the family returns later in the day, the clean dishes are simply there, stacked neatly, ready for use. Their presence is expected, unremarkable. No one considers the hours spent achieving that state. The absence of dirt is taken as default, not accomplishment. Success is defined by invisibility. Over time, this dynamic reinforces a quiet imbalance. Work that disappears when done well is rarely valued appropriately. The more effective the effort, the less likely it is to be noticed. This paradox defines much of domestic labor, and dishwashing is one of its clearest examples. There is no ceremony marking the end of the day's final round at the sink. Evening dishes are washed as faithfully as morning ones, even when fatigue is at its peak. The day closes as it began, hands in warm water, restoring order for the next cycle. When the lights are turned off and the house settles into night, the sink stands empty, gleaming briefly under the kitchen light. It holds no memory of the work that passed through it. By morning it will call again, ready to be filled, ready to demand the same quiet endurance. This is the nature of repetitive labor. It sustains daily life without leaving a trace of its own existence. And in the steady rhythm of washing, rinsing, and stacking, an entire portion of the day disappears, transformed into readiness for tomorrow. Laundry is never a single task completed and forgotten. It is a process that unfolds across the entire day, beginning long before the first garment touches water, and ending only when the last piece is folded and put away. In a 1950s household, washing clothes is not a matter of pressing a button and waiting. It is physical, methodical, and demanding, requiring strength, planning, and constant attention. The work begins with sorting. Clothes are separated carefully, guided by fabric, color, and purpose. Whites are kept apart from darker garments, delicate items set aside, heavily soiled pieces marked for extra care. Each category carries risk. One mistake can ruin an entire load, and replacement is not simple or inexpensive. The responsibility for preservation rests fully on the person doing the washing. Water must be prepared next. Buckets are filled, tubs positioned. And if a machine is present, it is heavy, loud, and far from reliable. Many homes still rely on wringer washers or partial hand washing, meaning clothes must be lifted, submerged, agitated, and moved repeatedly. Wet fabric grows heavy quickly, absorbing water until even small items require effort to manage. Soap is measured with care. Too little, and stains remain. Too much, and residue clings stubbornly, requiring additional rinses. There is no formula guaranteed to work. Each batch is a small experiment, informed by experience rather than instruction. Hands plunge into the water, pushing and pulling fabric, working soap through fibers by feel alone. Stains receive special attention. Grease, dirt, sweat, and ink all behave differently, and each demands a specific approach. Scrubbing is done with brushes or against textured surfaces, applying pressure until the fabric yields. This work is slow and often frustrating. Some marks refuse to disappear completely, lingering as reminders of imperfection despite best efforts. Once washed, clothes must be rinsed thoroughly. Soap left behind stiffens fabric and irritates skin. Rinsing requires fresh water, sometimes multiple rounds, each one repeating the lifting, submerging, and wringing. The wringer itself, if used, demands caution. Fingers must be kept clear, fabric guided carefully through rollers that show little mercy for mistakes. Drying introduces another layer of labor. Clothes are carried basket by basket to the clothesline or drying area. Each piece is shaken out, smoothed, and pinned carefully. Wind, weather, and time all become factors beyond control. A sudden change in conditions can undo hours of work, forcing adjustments or delays. There is no guarantee that the day will cooperate. Throughout this process, the body absorbs the strain. Arms ache from lifting. The lower back tightens from bending and standing. Hands grow rough from prolonged exposure to water and soap. These sensations accumulate quietly, often ignored until they become impossible to dismiss. There is no option to stop midway. Laundry cannot be left unfinished without consequences. While clothes hang drying, the waiting is deceptive. This is not downtime. It is an interval filled with vigilance. Weather must be watched, children monitored, other tasks completed without straying too far. The laundry remains mentally present, occupying attention even when physically distant. Once dry, the work continues. Clothes are taken down, folded roughly for transport, then carried back inside. At this stage, the weight has lessened, but the day is far from over. Ironing waits, as does mending. Buttons loosened in washing must be reattached. Seams checked. Socks paired. Each garment must be restored fully before it can return to circulation. Ironing itself is another demanding ritual. Irons are heavy, heated on the stove, and unforgiving. One moment of inattention can scorch fabric permanently. Each crease must be smoothed, each edge aligned. Clothing is expected to look crisp and orderly, a reflection of care and discipline. Wrinkles are not seen as harmless, but as signs of neglect. The volume of laundry ensures that this work fills hours. Families produce a steady stream of clothing, towels, and linens, each item passing through the same stages. Just as one batch is finished, another waits. There is no sense of completion, only rotation. Clean clothes move in as dirty ones move out, maintaining balance rather than progress. Emotionally, laundry carries its own weight. It is tied to comfort, hygiene, and appearance. Clean clothes protect health, signal respectability, and offer small reassurance in daily life. Failure here feels significant, even if the cause is exhaustion rather than carelessness. The standards remain high regardless of circumstance. This work is often done alone, without conversation or acknowledgement. The hours pass quietly, marked by physical movement rather than milestones. When others wear the freshly cleaned clothes, they rarely consider the process that brought them there. The garments appear renewed, detached from the labor that restored them. By the time the last piece is folded and stored, the day has shifted noticeably. Energy is depleted. Muscles protest. Yet there is little room for rest. Other tasks still wait, and tomorrow's laundry is already forming. The cycle does not pause simply because today's portion is complete. Laundry, then, is not just maintenance. It is endurance. It demands patience, strength, and careful attention, repeated week after week with little variation. It occupies space in the day and in the body, shaping posture, routine, and expectation. When evening arrives and the house settles, the laundry basket stands empty for a brief moment. That emptiness is temporary, almost symbolic. Soon it will fill again, signaling the return of the same process, the same demands. And when it does, the work will begin again, quietly, steadily, as it always has. Stains are never just stains. They arrive with stories attached, carrying evidence of daily life that refuses to disappear quietly. A grass mark on a child's trousers, grease on a work shirt, a faint ring at the collar that resists explanation. Each one represents a problem that must be solved, not postponed, because leaving it unaddressed invites judgment and consequence. Without modern products promising instant results, stain removal relies on knowledge passed down through experience rather than instruction. There is no single solution that works for everything. Each mark demands assessment. Its origin must be guessed, its age estimated, its fabric considered. The process begins with observation, leaning in close to judge texture and color, knowing that the wrong approach can make the damage permanent. Soap is the foundation, but rarely sufficient on its own. It is combined with heat, friction, and patience. Some stains respond only to cold water, others require warmth. Choosing incorrectly sets the stain deeper into the fibers, transforming a manageable problem into a lasting flaw. This decision must be made quickly, often without certainty, guided by instinct developed through countless past attempts. Household remedies fill the gaps left by limited options. Baking soda, vinegar, lemon juice, and even sunlight become tools in this quiet battle. These substances are applied carefully, tested in small areas before full commitment. There is a cautious creativity here, an improvised chemistry conducted at the edge of the sink or laundry tub. Success brings relief. Failure brings frustration and self-blame. Scrubbing is unavoidable. Brushes, cloths, and even fingernails are used to work cleaning agents into stubborn spots. The motion is repetitive and forceful, pushing against resistance until either the stain fades or the fabric weakens. There is a fine line between persistence and damage. Crossing it means replacing the garment, an outcome that carries financial and emotional weight. Some stains refuse to cooperate. They lighten but do not vanish, leaving behind faint reminders that become more noticeable under certain light. These remnants demand decisions. Is the garment still acceptable for daily wear? Can it be repurposed for less visible use? Or must it be hidden beneath layers, its flaw carefully concealed? Each choice reflects an effort to preserve value in a world where waste is not easily tolerated. The emotional impact of stain removal is subtle but persistent. Success feels necessary rather than celebratory. It restores order, prevents criticism, maintains standards. Failure feels personal. It suggests carelessness, lack of skill, or insufficient effort, even when the outcome was unavoidable. This framing places the burden squarely on the individual, ignoring the limits of tools and time. Children's clothing presents a particular challenge. Their days are filled with movement, spills, and play that leaves clear marks behind. These stains arrive frequently and unpredictably, often layered on top of one another. Removing them becomes a recurring task, one that must be approached without visible irritation. The expectation is patience, even when repetition wears thin. Adult garments carry different implications. A stained shirt worn to work reflects not just on the wearer, but on the household that maintains it. Clean, well-kept clothing signals discipline and respectability. Any deviation threatens that image. This raises the stakes, turning each mark into a problem that extends beyond fabric into social perception. Time complicates everything. Stains are easiest to remove when fresh, but fresh stains rarely appear at convenient moments. They are discovered during busy hours, when other tasks compete for attention. Choosing to address them immediately means delaying something else. Choosing to wait risks making the stain permanent. There is no ideal solution, only trade-offs. The process often repeats across multiple attempts. A garment may be washed, dried, inspected, and then returned to the sink for further treatment. Each cycle consumes time and energy, stretching a simple task into a prolonged effort. The persistence required here mirrors much of domestic labor, effort layered upon effort, with no guarantee of success. When stain removal works, the victory is quiet. The fabric looks as it should, blending back into normalcy. There is no marker of the work that made this possible. When it fails, the mark remains visible, a small but constant reminder of limitation. This imbalance reinforces the feeling that perfection is expected, while effort alone is insufficient. Over time, these small battles shape habits. Clothing choices become strategic, favoring fabrics and colors that hide wear. Children are dressed with an eye toward durability rather than appearance. These adjustments are subtle, practical responses to ongoing strain, rarely acknowledged as adaptations. The act of fighting stains reveals a deeper truth about the work itself. It is problem-solving under constraint, performed repeatedly with limited resources. It demands attention, creativity, and endurance, yet it is framed as basic upkeep rather than skill. The knowledge required to navigate it is informal, passed quietly from one generation to the next. By the end of the day, the stained garments that could be saved are returned to their places, indistinguishable from others. Those that could not are set aside, their future uncertain. The outcome feels final, even though the process will begin again tomorrow with new marks and new challenges. Stains, then, are more than accidents. They are interruptions that demand response, testing patience and competence. Each one adds weight to an already full day, asking for effort without offering recognition. And in meeting that demand again and again, the work continues, steady and unseen, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Ironing waits at the end of laundry like a final test of patience. Clothes may be clean and dry, but they are not considered finished until every crease has been pressed into place. In the 1950s, appearance carries weight beyond personal preference. Smooth fabric and sharp lines signal order, discipline, and respectability, extending the responsibility of care beyond cleanliness into presentation. The iron itself is a demanding tool. It is heavy, often heated on the stove, and slow to respond. There is no precise temperature control, only experience and caution. Too cool, and wrinkles resist. Too hot, and fabric scorches instantly, leaving damage that cannot be undone. The margin for error is narrow, and the consequences are immediate. Setting up for ironing takes time. The board must be positioned, covers adjusted, the iron tested carefully before touching any garment. This preparation is part of the work, though it is rarely counted as such. Each step must be completed in order, because skipping one invites mistakes later. As ironing begins, attention narrows. Each piece of clothing demands full focus. Sleeves are aligned, collar shaped, seam smooth. The process is slow and deliberate. Rushing only creates new wrinkles or risks damage. The body remains in a fixed posture, leaning slightly forward, arms moving rhythmically while the rest of the muscles hold steady. Heat builds in the room. Steam rises from damp fabric, carrying the faint scent of clean cotton and starch. The air grows heavy, especially during long sessions. Breaks are rare, because stopping disrupts momentum and stretches the task further into the day. Endurance becomes part of the expectation. Children's clothes are ironed first, often with extra care. Creases must be neat, edges precise. Their appearance reflects directly on the household. Any flaw feels more visible, more exposed. Adult garments follow, each one carrying its own standards. Work shirts demand crispness. Dresses require smoothness without shine. Each category comes with unspoken rules that must be respected. Mistakes are costly. A burned spot or shiny patch cannot be hidden easily. Such damage may render a garment unsuitable for public wear, narrowing options and increasing future work. The awareness of this risk sharpens concentration, adding mental strain to physical fatigue. Ironing is also time-consuming in ways that resist efficiency. Unlike washing, it cannot be done in large batches. Each item must be handled individually, assessed, pressed, and set aside. Progress is measured garment by garment, making the volume of work feel heavier as the pile shrinks slowly. The expectation of perfection amplifies the pressure. Wrinkles are not tolerated as natural consequences of use. They are interpreted as neglect. Clothing must appear as though it has just been purchased, even after repeated wear. This standard leaves little room for compromise, regardless of how full the day already is. Emotionally, ironing sits at an intersection of pride and obligation. A neatly pressed shirt offers a sense of accomplishment, a visible marker of effort. Yet that satisfaction is fragile, overshadowed by the knowledge that the work will need to be repeated soon. The ironed garment will crease the moment it is worn, undoing hours of labor. This repetition creates a cycle where effort is both necessary and temporary. The value lies in the moment of presentation, not in durability. This aligns with broader expectations placed on domestic work, where maintaining appearances matters more than sustainability or ease. Ironing is typically done alone. It does not invite conversation or shared participation. Others may pass through the room briefly, but the task remains solitary. The quiet is punctuated only by the hiss of steam and the soft scrape of metal against fabric. This isolation reinforces the sense that the work exists on the margins of attention. As the pile of clothing finally disappears, the board is folded away, the iron set aside to cool. There is no applause, no acknowledgement. The result is visible, but the effort behind it remains unspoken. The clothes are simply ready, expected to perform their role without drawing notice. By the time ironing is complete, energy is depleted. Arms ache, shoulders tighten, concentration fades. Yet the day does not end here. Other responsibilities still wait, indifferent to fatigue. Ironing, like so much of this labor, is a checkpoint rather than a finish line. In the broader context of the 1950s household, ironing symbolizes the tension between reality and expectation. It demands precision in a life already filled with demands. It enforces standards that leave little room for rest or imperfection. And in meeting those standards, day after day, the work reinforces a quiet truth. Maintaining appearance often requires more effort than anyone is willing to admit. When the evening approaches and the ironed clothes hang neatly in place, they represent success in the only form it is allowed to take, invisibly, without comment, ready to be worn as though no effort ever touched them. Once laundry is folded away and ironing is finished, the work shifts again, turning toward the parts of the house that reveal neglect most quickly. Floors, bathrooms, and windows do not tolerate delay. They record every movement, every touch, every passing hour. Keeping them clean is not a one-time effort, but an ongoing pursuit, defined by repetition and inevitability. Floors demand attention first because they show everything. Dirt carried in on shoes, crumbs dropped without notice, dust settling from the air, all accumulate silently. Sweeping becomes a daily ritual, sometimes more than once. The broom moves in long practice strokes, gathering debris into neat piles that are disposed of quickly. There is no satisfaction in sweeping beyond the brief moment when the floor looks clear. Within hours, signs of use return. Mopping follows, requiring water, soap, and patience. The floor must be cleared, chairs lifted, rugs moved aside. Each section is washed carefully, then left to dry. The smell of cleaning solution lingers, signaling effort, yet also reminding that the space is temporarily unusable. Walking across a wet floor risks undoing the work entirely. Timing becomes crucial, fitting this task into narrow windows of opportunity. Bathrooms carry an even heavier weight of expectation. They are judged harshly, both by the family and by any visitor. A clean bathroom suggests discipline and control. A dirty one implies neglect. This symbolism raises the stakes, making each detail matter. Sinks are scrubbed until porcelain shines. Taps are polished free of water spots. Soap residue is removed again and again, even though it returns almost immediately. Toilets require special care, cleaned thoroughly and discreetly. This task is unpleasant, yet unavoidable. It must be done regularly, regardless of fatigue or mood. The work is quiet, efficient, and often rushed, but never skipped. Cleanliness here is not optional. It is tied directly to dignity. Mirrors reveal imperfections mercilessly. Streaks catch the light, exposing missed effort. Glass cleaner is applied, wiped away, reapplied if necessary. The reflection sharpens awareness, showing not only the room, but the person maintaining it. Any flaw feels amplified, demanding correction. Windows extend this challenge outward. They connect the interior of the home to the outside world, and their clarity matters. Dust and fingerprints dull their surface quickly. Cleaning them requires reaching, stretching, and careful balance. Sunlight exposes streaks that were invisible moments before, turning a completed task back into unfinished work. What makes these chores particularly draining is their futility. No matter how thorough the effort, cleanliness fades. Floors are walked on, bathrooms used, windows touched. The house does not stay still long enough to preserve order. This creates a constant sense of chasing an ideal that retreats just out of reach. Despite this, standards remain fixed. There is no allowance for wear or use. Cleanliness is expected to be maintained continuously, not achieved once. This expectation ignores the reality of daily life, placing pressure on the person responsible to compensate endlessly. The physical demands are substantial. Kneeling to scrub floors strains joints. Reaching to clean windows tires shoulders and arms. Standing for long periods compounds fatigue already built from earlier tasks. These movements are repetitive and unrelenting, offering little variation or relief. Emotionally, this work reinforces a sense of vigilance. The house must be monitored constantly, its condition assessed and reassessed. There is little room for distraction or rest. Even moments of sitting carry an undercurrent of awareness, a mental checklist waiting to be addressed. When family members return, the clean floors, bathrooms, and windows blend into the background of normalcy. They notice only when something is wrong. Success is silent. Failure is immediate. This imbalance shapes motivation, teaching that effort matters most when it prevents criticism rather than earns praise. Over time, this cycle influences behavior. Shoes are removed at the door. Children are reminded repeatedly to be careful. Rules are enforced not for control, but for preservation. Each rule represents an attempt to slow the inevitable return of disorder, to protect the results of hard work for just a little longer. Yet even the strictest habits cannot stop wear entirely. Life moves through the house, regardless of effort. Accepting this reality quietly conflicts with expectations that demand perfection. The tension between these truths is never resolved, only managed day by day. By late afternoon, the house reaches a temporary equilibrium. Floors are clean, bathrooms presentable, windows clear enough to satisfy. This state is fragile, already eroding. There is no sense of completion, only pause. As evening approaches, the knowledge settles in that tomorrow will require the same attention, the same movements, the same persistence. Floors will gather dust again. Bathrooms will need scrubbing again. Windows will dull again. The work does not build toward an endpoint. It sustains an appearance, moment by moment. In this way, cleaning these spaces becomes an act of endurance rather than achievement. It is a commitment to repetition, upheld by expectation rather than reward. And within that repetition lies a quiet strength, expressed not through recognition, but through consistency that keeps the household functioning, even as the marks of effort fade almost as quickly as they are made. By midday, the house no longer feels empty, but it is far from settled. The morning's work has reshaped the space, yet its effects are already beginning to fade. Hunger returns, not with urgency or ceremony, but as a practical reminder that the day is moving forward. Lunch arrives without pause, without preparation time set aside solely for it. It must be created within the gaps left by other responsibilities. Unlike breakfast or dinner, lunch carries fewer expectations on the surface. It is rarely discussed, rarely anticipated. Yet it still must happen, and it must be sufficient. There is no delivery, no quick trip to a cafe, no convenience food waiting in the freezer. What is available is what remains, leftovers from the night before, bread nearing its end, small portions that must be stretched thoughtfully. The refrigerator offers limited options. Its contents reflect careful planning rather than abundance. Nothing is wasted casually. Every item has a purpose, even if that purpose has not yet been decided. The challenge is not simply to feed, but to combine what exists into something acceptable, something filling, something that does not draw attention to scarcity. Creativity becomes essential here. A small portion of meat is divided carefully, paired with starch to extend it. Vegetables are repurposed, seasoned differently to suggest variety. Bread is toasted, sliced thinly, made to feel intentional rather than leftover. These choices are not framed as creativity, but as necessity. Still, they require skill and foresight. Lunch is often eaten quickly, sometimes standing, sometimes alone. There is little ceremony in it. Plates are smaller, portions modest. This meal is functional, meant to sustain energy rather than provide pleasure. Even so, care is taken in its preparation. Food must look presentable, taste balanced. The effort remains, regardless of audience. When children return home for lunch, or when the meal is prepared for later, timing becomes critical. Food cannot sit too long. Warmth must be managed. Dishes must be ready again. The sink, briefly empty, fills once more. The rhythm of the day continues without interruption, layering task upon task. There is also planning embedded in this moment. While assembling lunch, the mind turns ahead to dinner. What ingredients remain? What must be saved? How can today's choices make tomorrow easier rather than harder? This forward thinking is constant, shaping decisions that appear small but carry weight over time. Improvised lunches reflect an unspoken understanding of balance. Heavier meals are reserved for evening, when the family gathers. Lunch exists in between, a bridge rather than a destination. It must not exhaust resources or energy. It must simply carry everyone forward. Emotionally, this meal is quiet. There is no recognition for making something from little, no acknowledgement of restraint or skill. The success of lunch is measured by its absence of complaint. If no one notices, it has done its job. This standard reinforces the invisibility of the effort behind it. The work surrounding lunch does not end when the meal is finished. Leftovers are stored carefully, labeled mentally for future use. Surfaces are wiped, dishes washed again. The brief interruption of eating dissolves back into routine, leaving no clear boundary between nourishment and labor. Over time, these lunches shape habits and expectations. Portions are sized instinctively. Preferences are anticipated. Waste is avoided almost without thought. This efficiency is learned, not taught, built through repetition rather than instruction. There is also an element of self-denial woven into this pattern. The person preparing the meal often eats last, or eats less. Hunger is postponed, ignored, or satisfied minimally. The priority remains others, even in moments meant for sustenance. In the broader context of the day, lunch represents adaptability. It requires working within limits, responding to what is available rather than what is ideal. This adaptability extends beyond food, reflecting a larger pattern of adjustment that defines the role itself. By early afternoon, lunch is passed, absorbed into the flow of the day. Its traces are minimal, clean plates, stored containers, a brief easing of hunger. There is no sense of completion, only continuation. What remains is the quiet understanding that this meal, like so many others, was made possible through attention, restraint, and skill. It did not announce itself. It did not demand praise. It simply existed, doing its work and then disappearing. Improvised lunches reveal a subtle form of competence, one that thrives under constraint. They show how care can persist without abundance, how nourishment can be provided without excess. In their simplicity lies a record of daily problem solving, repeated without acknowledgement. As the afternoon stretches ahead, the body carries the fuel provided, and the mind carries the next list of tasks waiting to be addressed. Lunch fades from memory almost immediately, yet its role is essential. It sustains not just the body, but the momentum of the day itself. And so, with plates cleared and attention already shifting forward, the cycle continues. Another meal has been created from what remained. Another responsibility met quietly. The house moves on, supported by effort that leaves no mark, no trace beyond the steady continuation of ordinary life. By midday, the house is quieter, but the work is far from over. The morning's cleaning has barely settled, and the next responsibility arrives without ceremony: lunch. There is no pause, no sense of completion between tasks. The rhythm of the day moves forward automatically, and the kitchen once again becomes the center of attention. Lunch is not a social event or a moment of leisure. It is another obligation to be fulfilled efficiently, quietly, and without waste. The refrigerator offers only modest options. Leftovers from last night's dinner sit in small glass containers, carefully wrapped or covered with wax paper. A bit of roast meat, perhaps slightly dry. Vegetables cooked the night before, softened further by time. Bread that must be checked for freshness, milk that must be sniffed before use. Every item is evaluated not just for taste, but for economy. Nothing is thrown away lightly. Every scrap has potential value. Planning lunch is an exercise in mental arithmetic. Portions must be stretched, ingredients reused, and meals arranged so that dinner will still be possible later in the day. A single chicken might appear in multiple forms across several meals. Soup made from bones and leftover vegetables. Sandwiches filled with sliced meat saved carefully from the night before. Salads built not for luxury, but for practicality, using whatever remains crisp enough to serve. There are no microwave ovens to rely on, no ready-made meals to fall back on. Heating leftovers means turning on the stove, watching pots carefully, stirring to prevent sticking or burning. Time must be managed precisely. Too much heat wastes fuel and risks ruining food. Too little leaves the meal unsatisfying. Attention is constant, even for something as simple as reheating soup. Creativity becomes essential. Lunch must feel different enough from dinner to avoid monotony, even when the ingredients are nearly the same. Leftover vegetables are chopped finer, seasoned differently, or mixed into something new. Cold meat becomes warm filling. Yesterday's bread becomes toast, croutons, or breadcrumbs. The goal is transformation, not repetition, even if the resources are limited. There's also an unspoken expectation that lunch should be nutritious, balanced, and presentable. It may be a simple meal, but it still reflects on the household. A poorly prepared lunch suggests carelessness. A thoughtful one, even made from leftovers, signals competence and devotion. These judgments are rarely spoken aloud, but they are deeply felt. Often, lunch is eaten quickly and alone. Children are at school. The husband is at work. There is no audience, no praise, and no lingering at the table. Plates are filled, food is eaten, and the kitchen must be cleaned again almost immediately. Dishes return to the sink. Crumbs are wiped away. The stove is turned off, but not forgotten, as it will be needed again soon. This solitary meal highlights the isolation built into the day. There is little opportunity for rest or reflection. Even while eating, the mind remains occupied. Dinner plans are already forming. Shopping lists are mentally adjusted. Supplies are counted and recounted. How much flour remains? How many eggs are left? Whether milk will last until tomorrow. Waste is a constant concern. Throwing food away feels like a personal failure, not just a financial one. Meals are designed to use everything fully, down to the last usable portion. Peels and scraps are saved for stocks. Stale bread is repurposed. Nothing is truly considered finished until every possible use has been exhausted. Lunch also serves as a quiet checkpoint in the day. It reveals whether the morning has gone according to plan or fallen behind. A rushed lunch suggests tasks piling up. A calm one means time has been managed well, at least for now. Either way, there is no stopping. The afternoon will bring more cleaning, preparation, and anticipation of the evening meal. In this routine, food is more than nourishment. It is proof of discipline, foresight, and endurance. Lunch may be modest, but it carries the weight of responsibility. It demonstrates the ability to sustain a household not through abundance, but through careful attention and adaptability. By the time the last dish is washed and set aside, the moment has passed. There is no memory made, no conversation to recall. Lunch has been served, consumed, and erased, leaving behind only the knowledge that dinner is coming, and with it, the cycle will begin again. As the day moves toward evening, fatigue settles in quietly but firmly. There is no dramatic collapse, no clear signal that the body has reached its limit. Instead, exhaustion becomes a background presence, something carried rather than confronted. Muscles ache, hands feel rough from constant contact with water and cleaning agents, and the mind grows heavy with lists that never seem to end. Yet the work continues, not because energy remains, but because stopping is not considered an option. The most defining feature of this life is repetition. Every task completed today will return tomorrow in nearly identical form. Beds will be made again. Floors will be swept again. Meals will be planned, cooked, served, and cleared away again. There is no finish line, no lasting sense of accomplishment. Success is measured not by progress, but by maintenance. Things are kept from falling apart, and that is considered enough. This repetition shapes identity. Over time, the boundaries between personal desire and obligation blur. The rhythm of the household dictates the rhythm of the individual. Needs are anticipated before they are expressed. Problems are solved quietly, often before anyone else notices they exist. This constant vigilance becomes a skill, but also a burden, because it is rarely acknowledged as such. Much of this labor remains invisible. A clean home does not announce how many hours it took to achieve. A warm meal does not reveal the planning, budgeting, and physical effort behind it. When everything runs smoothly, it appears effortless, as if it simply happened on its own. The absence of chaos is mistaken for the absence of work. Social expectations reinforce this invisibility. A well-managed home is seen as normal, not remarkable. Praise, if it comes at all, is subtle and infrequent. Complaints, however, are remembered. A missed detail or imperfect result can overshadow countless successful days. This imbalance teaches carefulness, but also anxiety. Perfection becomes the safest goal, even when it is exhausting. There is also emotional labor woven into every hour. Comforting children, maintaining a pleasant atmosphere, and absorbing the stress of others without adding to it are all part of the role. Emotions are managed as carefully as finances and schedules. Frustration must be hidden. Fatigue must be softened into patience. The household depends not only on physical effort, but on emotional steadiness. Even moments of rest are conditional. Sitting down often comes with guilt, as if stillness must be earned and justified. The mind remains alert, listening for sounds that signal new demands. A door opening, footsteps in the hall, or the clock marking another hour closer to dinner can pull attention away instantly. Rest is light, temporary, and easily interrupted. Over years, this way of living builds resilience. Problems are handled with practicality. Unexpected challenges are met with improvisation rather than panic. There is strength in this adaptability, though it is rarely named as such. Endurance becomes a quiet skill, honed through necessity rather than choice. Yet endurance also comes at a cost. Personal ambitions are often postponed indefinitely. Dreams are folded away in favor of immediate responsibilities. Time for reflection, learning, or self-expression is limited and fragmented. Identity becomes closely tied to usefulness, making it difficult to imagine value outside of service. As evening settles and the family gathers again, the day appears to come full circle. Dinner is served. Plates are filled. Conversation resumes. From the outside, the household looks complete and stable. The effort that sustains it remains largely unseen, absorbed into the walls, the furniture, and the routines themselves. When the final dishes are washed and the lights are dimmed, there is a brief pause. Tomorrow is already waiting. The same cycle will begin again, unchanged in structure, but carried by the same steady commitment. This life is not defined by dramatic moments, but by persistence. It is a story written in small actions, repeated endlessly, forming the foundation upon which everything else rests. In recognizing this, the ordinary becomes significant. What once seemed routine reveals its depth. The daily labor, often dismissed or overlooked, emerges as a form of quiet strength. Not loud, not celebrated, but essential. And in that endurance, repeated day after day, lies the true weight and meaning of this way of life. As the story comes to an end, what remains is not a single dramatic moment, but a deeper understanding of a life shaped by routine, responsibility, and quiet determination. The world of the 1950s housewife was built on repetition, yet within that repetition lived skill, intelligence, and strength. Each small task, when viewed alone, seemed ordinary. Taken together, they formed an unbroken chain that held an entire household in balance. This was a life rarely paused and seldom praised. It demanded constant awareness, physical stamina, and emotional control. It asked for creativity without recognition, patience without rest, and commitment without guarantees. And yet, day after day, the work was done. Meals appeared on tables. Homes remained orderly. Families moved forward, supported by effort that often went unseen. Looking back, it becomes clear that this labor was not simple or insignificant. It was foundational. It shaped daily life, social expectations, and generations that followed. Understanding it allows us to see the past more honestly, not as a collection of nostalgic images, but as a lived reality filled with discipline, sacrifice, and resilience. Thank you for spending this time exploring the story with us. If you found meaning in these quiet moments from history, we hope you will carry that perspective with you and return for more stories that reveal the hidden layers of everyday life. Until next time, take care and thank you for listening.